If you find adventure at the click of a button, or from the turn of a page, or the casting of a die, join your hosts, Coniff and Shiloh, on an unforgettable journey. Questing the Multiverse.
Remember, the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Welcome to Questing the Multiverse, episode 16. I'm your host, Shiloh, and with me is Coniff. Coniff, did you watch V for Vendetta?
No, I am sorry to say. But I know and I respect that film greatly. Mm-hmm. I just didn't have time when the kids were not. It's not a kid friendly movie.
No, not exactly. No.
But yes, it is. It's November 5th. That's a very important day in British history. So
it is. And I was doing some digging.
Okay.
Evidently, it's not really celebrated for the reasons I thought originally. It was kind of celebrated as I thought it was celebrated as a kind of an off. Not necessarily middle finger to the government, but I wouldn't put it past the British people to do that with the Sex Pistols and everything and punk rock. But I thought it was more of that. It's not. It's more of a celebration of, yay, we hung Guy Fawkes, who was the guardian of 36 powders of gunpowder at the bottom of what would be, quote unquote, Parliament. But yeah, it was the celebration of his hanging. So kind of the death of the quote-unquote terrorism plot. So, you know, I don't know. It's what you make of it. The movie obviously is kind of a call to that. Mm-hmm. V's kind of flipped the script on that holiday to a degree, you could say. So it was successful. Quote unquote terrorism. So, you know, it different people have different outlooks on terrorism. Like, no terrorism is, you know, valid. But if you think about it, we wouldn't be a country if it weren't for terrorism, really. I mean, when you break it down.
I wouldn't say terrorism as much as I'd say rebellion.
Revolt. Yeah, and that's kind of the spirit of it. And, you know,
I think, as an American, to me, V for Vendetta or the 5th of November, you know, the historical part of it aside, like, it represents to me the idea that the people can take back control rather than the elite.
Yeah, and that was always the spirit of America. That's why, you know, that's why the Fifth Amendment is there and all of that. You know, our forefathers wanted that. They didn't want that sort of thing to ever kind of come into play. And it's a very good look at what could be. And if you really look at the, I guess there's an underlining political message to be made out of the movie and the graphic novel of where it came. But it's a very good, poignant message to everyone. And, you know, from, I don't even remember when V for Vendetta was originally written, but
the book or the graphic novel.
The graphic novel, probably in the 70s, I'm guessing. But yeah, it's very poignant.
80s, it looks like.
Okay. Yeah, it's a very, very good movie. But yeah.
Well, nice. It is the 5th, and I guess if you're listening to this, it won't be the 5th. But when we're recording and sitting down, it is the 5th. Yeah, it's been one heck of a start to this month already, Shiloh. I haven't done much. We'll get right into the what you've been up to. And mine is specifically, I joined the Lore Forged crew along with our friend Katie for a charity live stream of an Ashes of Creation tabletop RPG on the 4th, and it was an 8-hour long stream, and we made up characters, and it was basically a one-shot campaign that our friend Jibs had crafted. It was very long. That was my it was a marathon. It was very fun though. I had fun. I see why people really enjoy doing these tabletop RPG things. There is a freedom there that you don't get in video games and the like in board games and stuff. It was a very successful stream. They raised over $1,000 for Extra Life, and so for the kids of, I believe it was Rady Hospital somewhere in California, and they were on the team for Intrepid Studios for Ashes of Creation. So I think overall they raised over $40,000 for various Extra Life things. So that was amazing. Big shout out to all the people that donated. Wouldn't have done it without you. And then as far as the RPG went, we did complete the story that Jibs had for us. And so that was exciting. It was a lot of fun. I think in the future, I would like to actually try real D&D, 5e. So we were using the Genesis system, which is a Fantasy Flight Games creation. I know they use it for a Star Wars RPG that they put out and publish. And I think it works great there because I think in that Star Wars system you can't play as a Jedi, and so there's no magic or such things. So the system really works if you're using all weapons all the time. Well, my character for this RPG, and again, it was using this system, but it was crafted to be Ashes of Creation, so we had to take a lot of creative liberties. I was playing a mage, and so it was really hard to kind of understand how magic, especially spells that I basically had to make up, worked with this system. But it was fun. But between you and me and all of our listeners, I would be curious to see what it's actually like, a full-fledged 5th edition. Just playing as a spellcaster, because you'll have I took a look at the wizard's spell list, from cantrips all the way to level 9, and there's a ton of stuff there. And so I think there's a lot of ways that I could have handled, or as a team, as a group, as adventurers, we could have handled different things. But especially my character, that I just wasn't able to do because we were making everything up. But it was a lot of fun. The story was great. As you probably can imagine, things got off the rails as quick as they could. Cash was playing a cleric that was specifically a really dumb and ditzy cleric, and it was pretty hilarious because every time something weird would happen, he would just point and be like, "There's evil afoot!" Because he's playing this it was almost like a paladin cleric, kind of what it felt like. It was pretty fun. So that was, it was a ton of fun to, one, get to play with them in such a way, but two, actually experience this whole D&D phenomenon, if you will. Again, more properly, because the only other time I've ever ran anything as a player, my character was created for me. It was a very specific one-shot. It took maybe 2.5 hours. That was it. It was fun, but it was very simplistic. This was far more involved, and none of us died, so that was good. I was ready to sacrifice my own character, but it would have been, I would have cast Meteor Storm, and I guess it would have killed everyone. So it was not trying to take out our whole party. So that was that. What about you, Shiloh? Have you done anything fun in the past week?
Nothing like that. Just tinkering around in New World and Final Fantasy XIV, and played a little bit of I almost said Star Wars, Starfield. I installed it on my computer just to see if it would run, now that I have my handy dandy
extra drive
little Western Digital 2 gigabyte passport thing. Little guys are small. I didn't realize how small they were, but it's it runs fine on my computer, and so I just figured all right, maybe if I put it on 2 systems, I'll have a more bigger chance of me actually playing it, trying to get somewhere with it. So we shall see. Unfortunately, time has just been an issue in work. Yeah, but there is a possibility of I went and looked at another house.
Nice.
So that old chestnut has popped up again, but this house would need some work, and I'm hoping that it would. I'm hoping everything works out financially as far as loans and what would need to be cleared through the loan, because it would need some work, but the possibilities of this house are really, really cool. So that was kind of one thing I've been kind of waiting for, is something that I could
put some work into.
Yeah, that I could, and some of these places were just like, they're just kind of as is, and wasn't a whole lot you could do to it. But this one has some potential, we'll just say that. So, and some land too, which is nice, beautiful land.
Yeah.
So,
well, I hope it works out for you.
Yeah,
or at least it puts you in the right direction or something. So, well. Shall we? This episode, a whole lot of news stuff this week. Some very bad, some pretty fantastic. But I think that's going to kind of be the case going through the rest of the year. We've got a lot of, especially, and I'm going to talk at the very end what the rest of 2023 looks like for questing the multiverse, because we've already kind of got it lined up. But, everybody knows that when you get to this point in the year, you've got holiday sales, you've got holiday announcements, you've got just shakeups as the new fiscal year starts and all sorts of things. And of course, we've got the Game Awards, and a ton of announcements usually happen during that. So the end of the year, one thing that we talked about before we ever launched this podcast was when we did our old show, GG Party Chat, we specifically didn't want to talk news or drama in gaming. And so we did that for 3 years. And when we were talking about questing the multiverse, we're taking a look, step back, and we're like, that's where half the fun is. Like the speculation, the discussion. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's throwing their opinion out on the microphone. We might as well do the same. We've been playing games for decades at this point, so we might as well weigh in. And so I've loved that direction change. I don't know about you, Shiloh, but like there's a lot to get excited about. There's also a lot of like hot button issues.
Yeah.
Like when people were saying Baldur's Gate 3 was shouldn't be held to a high, shouldn't hold other games to a higher standard, and that all that BS. There's a lot of stuff that's worth weighing in on because it affects all of us as far as gaming goes. So why don't you kick it off in the news, and then we'll just go back and forth on these different topics we've got, and then eventually we'll get to Final Fantasy XIV. Probably be a little shorter segment on Final Fantasy XIV this episode, but then we've got some more in the works. So Shiloh, take it away.
Well, this bit of news is going to be excuse the pun on November 5th, but pretty sobering. The article comes from Kotaku, which, whatever, by Ethan Gotch, I'm guessing his name is. And I don't know if this is clickbait, but the title of the article is Report. Bungie blames 100 layoffs on players leaving Destiny 2. I don't know if that's really true, but let's get to the facts here. So Bungie has laid off 100 employees that I'm guessing were particularly sectioned off into the Destiny 2 area, as opposed to their new Project Marathon. which I guess has its own staff now. I'm not really totally sure on that, but
Yeah, who knows?
so it's according to a new report by Bloomberg, which details a meeting earlier this month in which studio leadership blamed poor player retention. So maybe this is kind of a little bit true. Following 2023's disappointing Lightfall expansion for review going off of a cliff. So I don't know if you can really blame players for that as much as Lightfall. I've played it. You haven't. Was kind of the stank.
Which is a big bummer because if you remember, and for listener, we did an episode on Destiny 2 in GG Party Chat realm. And this is important to this podcast because Shiloh and I specifically have had a sort of off and on playing history with Destiny 2. I played Destiny 1 back when I think Crota's End was the only raid. So like at the very beginning. But Shiloh and I had a pretty on and off history with Destiny 2. And when we did the episode, it was an on history with it. You know, like we were playing, and I believe that was Forsaken was still in. I don't think, maybe Shadowkeep had just come out. And this would have been, what, 2020? So somewhere along there, right? And so just as Shiloh, has said, like, this new expansion just fizzled. And the thing was, we thought Witch Queen was a step in the right direction. At least I thought that, and I know Swine did as well. And
everyone did.
So they took that step and then just immediately walked back, is what you're saying with Lightfall?
Yeah. And a lot of it, and Lightfall was evidently one of their biggest sellers since Forsaken, but a lot of it had to do with the success of the Witch Queen.
Yeah.
And so coming off of the Witch Queen, which was arguably, well, I don't even know if you can really argue it, if not right behind Forsaken. Yeah, I would probably put it right behind Forsaken as one of their better expansions. I would probably say that, Witch Queen, and then right after it, probably Beyond Light, for me anyway.
Do you think that part of Witch Queen's success was the fact they did the 30th anniversary right before with the Galahorn, what 20th, 30th, whatever anniversary it was, with the Galahorn plus that piratey dungeon?
I don't know about that. I think a lot of it had to do with just reviews, and they also led that right before the Witch Queen, which was like that 6-month long season. But it was a really, really good season. Unfortunately, it was just 6 months
it was very
long. That was when Marosov came back into the picture. So they had a lot of story and lore that was kind of diving into it. So kind of, it was a long prelude, but it was a good prelude to the Witch Queen. And then eventually Witch Queen came out, and it was well received, even though we didn't get a special darkness power. I'm sure there were people that were upset about that and all that kind of stuff. But it was well received. And Lightfall is just pretty disappointing, really, in comparison. So. But from this article and what I've gathered in articles by Paul Tassi, and I've watched a few videos. One that our boy Aztecross and Fallout did, kind of talking about all this, and it was just didn't sound good at all. There were some kind of underhanded ways that they let some of these people go. They let off some of the people that did the original soundtrack music. They let off the guy that did
Salvatore.
Deep Stone Lullaby, which is mind-boggling.
This is the best song in that game.
And it just sounds like Sony just kind of said, well, we're all across all the borders, we're all cutting some trim, cut some fat. So you're now part of us. So you got to cut some fat. And Bungie had to decide. So I don't know if, it's one of those, do you blame the chicken or the egg for coming first? I don't really know, but Bungie just seems to kind of always get themselves in this predicament because they joined Activision and then they left Activision because they wanted to be by themselves again. And then they were like, well, we'll let Sony buy us out. And now they're probably in this scenario all over again. It's just kind of sad. And I think they were picking up some momentum for the new expansion that was supposed to be released in February. And now there's talk that it might be delayed until June. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know if they can really overcome all of this. You know, I have a little bit of faith that they can pull it together, but I don't really have a ton, to be honest. So. And I'm a big Destiny 2 fan. I don't like a lot of the decisions they make, whether it being the whole sunsetting thing to the obvious, which is pulling all of it. Actually, I'm talking about sunsetting weapons, not like sunsetting entire planets that they did, and all that kind of stuff, entire story arcs, and where does a new player go and find any kind of continuity? There's just none of that now, so it's just sad.
We had a really good discussion on this in the Questing the Multiverse Discord. Started by Doctor. So Doctor is one of Shiloh and I's friends that we've played. Really, I mean, he was a mainstay with Destiny. He was always the one that would guide us through everything, and he knows his stuff, and he's been playing for a long time. And so he was the one that kind of started this. And I mean, he was saying that, like, as what it looks like right now is they don't even have community managers now because they fired them. So they don't even have community managers to sort of help along the community with this whole thing that's going on. And so with him, and then my friend Moses, or Jake, he's a good friend in Omaha, just about how, like, this is just like a devastating thing for Bungie. And then our friend Archbeetle weighed in. But the key takeaway here is that, like, as you said, like, some of these people have been with Bungie since the beginning, since the 90s. Since Halo. This is Bungie we're talking about. The reason we have Halo to this day. But this is not the Bungie. Like, today's Bungie is not the Bungie that was back then. Not just because they let people go, but, like, Bungie back in the 90s and early 2000s reinvested their money into the game. And this is something that Doctor called out about, like, how asinine the business model is, that you're banking on Destiny to fund itself and two other games that aren't on the market, so Marathon and the future of Destiny, and then not reinvest money into the game itself. Like, you cannot have something support an entire studio, but then not be willing to pump up that game and reinvest in it. Blizzard has been reinvesting in World of Warcraft for 20 years, and it is the best MMO on the market. You know, whether your opinion is that or not, it's the most popular. And so, like what you were saying, just how it just doesn't make any sense. You know, it's like, it's honestly, it's a little depressing. And then Jake, or Moses, sent a tweet that was Aztec Cross reporting that Bungie had escaped from Tarkov players or streamers play Marathon, and that they didn't even seem interested in the game. So not only is Destiny sort of on very tough times, if Marathon isn't a win for Bungie, like, that's a serious deal. Like, we may never see a Bungie supported game again. Not by Bungie. Sony might just absorb them and become something else entirely, which would be depressing because, like we talked about, Bungie is responsible for early console FPS gaming at its finest. So
yeah, and if you were years ago, maybe Forsaken, even Shadowkeep, but definitely like Forsaken, Beyond Light, those eras, and even the Witch Queen, if you said, well, Bungie is going to make a an MMO, even if it was a first-person, like, fantasy-based MMO, I'd have been all on board. Like, let's go, you know. But now, no, no, thank you. I can barely get myself, and I've wanted to go back, but now I'm like, I just don't know. I can't really see myself investing, and I want to see out at least the next expansion, but now I'm really hesitant. Like, I just don't know if I can. I want to support these people, but I also
and it's a real shame because like this series is probably one of the best space fantasy IPs in video gaming. I mean, like I would consider maybe Mass Effect more sci-fi, but like Destiny hit similar chords to Halo, obviously, which hit similar chords to something like Star Wars, where it's sci-fi, but it's more space fantasy. And Destiny even took that a step further with the Warlocks and, you know, the Titans and Hunters and the powers and the light and all that. And so it's like, it's just a damn shame that the game is in this state, because if you look from the beginning, Destiny 1 all the way to now, and you put it all together, like that's a net good experience. Like it's really just these last few years that have taken a nosedive for Destiny. So
yeah, just sad. You know what else is sad?
What?
The next news story.
Oh no, you got both the sad ones this time.
It is a little sad. So this story comes from PC Gamer, but so after 3 years of hands-off management, which I didn't realize Microsoft owned Bethesda and ZeniMax for 3 years, but I guess they do.
Has it been that long? Wow.
I guess so. Microsoft is making Bethesda and ZeniMax report directly to an Xbox bigwig. So
okay, so unpack that. What's that look like?
My guess is Redfall. It's probably one of the biggest bombs of 2023. It was developed by the the multiplayer. FPS was developed by Arcane, which has got a really good track record with Prey and what they do, Dishonored. Did the Dishonored series, so they have a really, really good track record.
And we really liked Prey. In fact, Prey is one that whenever I see it on sale on Steam, I'm like, that is tempting, because I would like to own it and actually complete it this time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here we go. This is sad. Less than 6 months after launch, only 30 people are playing it on Steam right now. From when Andy Chalk wrote this article, which is sad. And it came to light not long after it launched that Arcane was equally enthusiastic about it. So there was a lot of talk with Arcane that it got rushed out and all that. And
people were saying it just wasn't, like the loop wasn't fun, because it tried to be like, you know, that Left 4 Dead style. And I mean, Left 4 Dead came out in like 2007, with the second game coming out in like 2009, somewhere in that era. Like that's an entirely different era of video games. And people liked that back then because it didn't need to be this big grandiose thing. And so if you try to take that, but you don't do it 100% like Left 4 Dead and do it well, and then you try to make it big, and so then you just fail at both those things, it's just a bigger fail.
Yeah, so it looks like it's I don't know if Starfield had a little bit to do with it, but maybe it didn't completely live up to the pre-release hype. I've enjoyed what I've experienced with the game so far, but it's hard to argue that it really maybe didn't really live up to that pre-release. Like it was a lot of hype, and we got the game and it was like, oh, it's a Bethesda game.
It was a good Bethesda game too.
Yeah, and I think it was I don't know if it was actively promoted as this is going to change your idea of Bethesda, but that's the way it came across to me, like, oh wow, this would be like a whole new Bethesda game.
Yeah.
And it really was pretty much Skyrim or Fallout 76 in space. So, I mean, really, it has a lot of interesting features and things, but the nuts and bolts of it are fairly.
Well, and who was it that just left Bethesda that we just talked about?
Pete Hines, yeah. So this is all kind of after Pete Hines has left as well.
Although he was, I don't know if he would. I think he might have just been publishing, like head of publishing.
Yeah,
head
of publishing. He was kind of the most public face. Basically, what the article says, basically the Bethesda version of Larry Herd, which is Xbox's kind of voice, mouth of Xbox.
The mouth of Sauron.
So Phil Spencer has also announced that Sarah Bond, who you see a lot of Xbox game promotions and Xbox game release videos and stuff, is previously Microsoft's Xbox corporate vice president, is being promoted to president of Xbox.
Okay.
Which will include devices, player and creator experiences, platforming, engineering, strategy, business planning, blah, 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 blah.
All that nerd,
all that
corporate stuff.
Nerd corporate stuff that I don't understand. Because I'm the opposite of that. Yeah. So that's a interesting thing. I don't know what all of this means going forward, considering Bethesda releases a game every 6 years. So, I don't know. What do you think about this? The only thing I could think of, like, their next game is what? Elder Scrolls 6? So, I know that's before that's before Fallout. I know that for a fact.
I mean, they'll release Starfield DLC before Elder Scrolls 6. I wonder if part of it is like, Starfield is a good game. If you released Starfield in 2015, 2014, it would be very likely game of the year. Like, because it's a very good Bethesda game. The problem is, we haven't had a Bethesda single-player RPG since Fallout 4 in 2015 or whenever that was. And so that's literally 8 years of no Bethesda single-player game. And meanwhile, the gaming industry has evolved immensely in the past 8 years. I mean, just like between all the new Nintendo stuff, like Breath of the Wild, which I think Breath of the Wild's older, but like Tears of the Kingdom, and then Sony, you've got the Spider-Man games, the God of Wars, The Last of Us Part 2, all these things that have sort of reinvented the way we think about single-player games. Then there's the From Software stuff like Sekiro and Elden Ring. And you've got all these different games, and then indie games, Stray or Inside Out. Mm-hmm. Gaming has changed. And so then Bethesda is like that old furniture maker, old toy maker, whatever, that releases the same type of toy they released a decade previous. It's just not as popular anymore because people have evolved and adapted. It'd be like, are you familiar with Calvin and Hobbes? Mm-hmm. This might be a bad example because I don't know if he's dead or not, actually. But if Calvin and Hobbes made a resurgence from Bill Watterson, like, it would explode in popularity just because of how legendary it is. But like he did his comic for like 10 years or something. I remember my dad telling me all this, and then he like just stopped. And so it became this cult famous comic because it was stopped while people were still enjoying it. Like, how like Firefly, everyone loves Firefly. But like if you released Firefly now,
seasons,
it probably wouldn't do well because we've evolved. We expect The Expanse. We expect big budget Star Wars style TV, like Ahsoka and The Mandalorian now.
And that's always true with any kind of art form. If you think of, like, even in the restaurant business, if you don't evolve, eventually you just fade away.
Yep.
And you don't necessarily have to keep up with the newest trend. You don't have to be trendy because then it's just a one-off. and then you just end up like Right Said Fred. I don't know if that's a musical.
It's beyond my.
I'm too sexy.
Oh, I do know that song. Yeah.
Yeah. you just become a one-hit wonder.
Yes.
And then you end up closing in a year. Musical artist, if you don't change what you're doing, eventually you just don't make any more albums. So yeah, that could be part of it.
Well, and so maybe that's where the shakeup is. It's not really a shakeup. They're just basically assuming control for the first time in 3 years. And maybe that's it. Maybe Xbox is taking a look and saying, Bethesda, the game was good. Starfield. This is what we want you to do now going forward. Like, we need you to get with the times. So I wouldn't be surprised and I know, just as a consumer, like, the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be a big deal. Skyrim was and is arguably top 5 game of the last decade. Well, it's more than a decade now, of the 2010s, right? Because you've got Minecraft in there, you've got Skyrim, you've got Fortnite, and those are like big 3 games. So I would assume that Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be a huge deal, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is partially Microsoft saying, okay, you need to
it could just
sort of
be
catch up to
It
us.
could be a lending hand, like, hey, maybe we could get you, we can help you obtain a certain level of something that you may not have realized that you need or something,
Which we all were hopeful for when we first heard this acquisition for the sake of Elder Scrolls Online, because we're like, there are some huge problems on Xbox console. We need this. Maybe this will bolster server performance or whatever.
Yeah. So. And it could have something to do with ZeniMax's next MMO.
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to steer that help steer that in a direction that ZeniMax couldn't think of. Or there's lots of possibilities of what's going on here, but it was just an interesting article. I was like, oh, that was kind of eye-popping, and seeing what's going on there. So
yeah, it's probably not much, but it does signify a change in direction. Because whenever the people at the top switch hands, you're getting a different vision, you're getting a different direction. That's just the way it is in the corporate world. So, okay. So, those are kind of not so happy topics. The Bethesda Microsoft one is kind of just neutral. These next two are more exciting topics. And the first is that BlizzCon was this weekend, and we got to hear about a ton of stuff that they're doing. Another acquisition. This actually went through the acquisition by Microsoft of Activision Blizzard. So maybe we'll see. We'll be having this discussion, deja vu, in like a year or two. All right, they report straight to Phil Spencer now. But some of the stuff is interesting, and both Shiloh and I are not huge into the World of Warcraft universe. I think we both have a healthy respect for it because of how it's shaped our favorite genre of games. But we're not like fanboys. We're not Blizzard veterans who have been there from the beginning.
Yeah, we call it Blizz Boys. That's going to be my new term for Blizz Boys.
But so this is some of the stuff that they talked about, and we'll save the best for last. But first, Diablo 4's first expansion will be called Vessel of Hatred, and it's going to bring in a classic Diablo, a brand new, never before seen class. There wasn't much said, so that's that.
The Milkman.
They are adding Cataclysm into World of Warcraft Classic, which I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what people's thoughts were like when Classic first released, because I think a lot of them were probably like, oh, they'll just, keep it like this. No, they're going to re-release all the old Classic expansions. It's going to make them money. Why wouldn't they? Overwatch 2's next hero, and I'm going to butcher this name, Mauga. He's a Samoan I think he's a tank. Yeah, wields heavy artillery weapons like an incendiary chain gun and volatile chain gun. And then the thing about Overwatch 2 is like it's had a bit of a rocky launch since they basically absorbed Overwatch 1 and all this. But anytime there's a new hero in Overwatch, the people who play Overwatch get really excited. When I was playing Overwatch 1, like it's just an opportunity to learn a new hero and how that fits into group composition and stuff. Yeah. There's a Hearthstone major expansion called Showdown in the Badlands, which is Azeroth's Wild West. So that would be interesting. They announced a Diablo tabletop RPG. And Warcraft Rumble gets a launch cinematic and launch gameplay. And I'm not sure what Rumble is exactly, but it's a mobile game, so that I'm not going to play it. I'll be honest. And then you put on here that Phil Spencer was at BlizzCon. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's like the big boss being like, "Yes, I'm here." And now that the acquisition.
Look at me, senpai. Notice me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know what that. Just thought that was interesting. Did he speak or I just?
Yeah, this is the quote. Throughout Blizzard's history, they've pioneered and refined so much across the gaming industry, and many of you today have been a part of that journey, he said on stage. Think of Diablo, it propelled the action RPG genre forward. StarCraft's, which I always forget StarCraft was a Blizzard thing.
Oh, yeah.
StarCraft spawned the foundation for what esports would eventually become. That's very true. StarCraft 2 was a major catalyst for the evolution of games as live entertainment. Also very true. And then World of Warcraft needs no introduction. So the final announcement from BlizzCon, and in my opinion the most important one, is the direction that Blizzard is taking retail World of Warcraft with this next trilogy or saga of expansions called the World Soul Saga. The first of which was The War Within. Did you, Shiloh, get a chance to watch the War Within cinematic trailer?
I did.
Now, quick question. Mm-hmm. Could you tell that it was CGI and not a real live action? Because until Anduin spoke, I legit could not tell. I'm watching on a 1440p monitor. I could not tell that was CGI. It was extremely convincing.
Yeah, I thought it was real life until obviously the orcs showed up.
Are you sure? There's no orcs? I live in Missouri. There's plenty of those.
Oh, are there? You just go to the local Walmart. Yeah, it was a really well done trailer. I still have no idea what that huge spoiler. I don't know what that huge sword in the background was like. Oh, well, they I don't know what did they say I don't know who they were aiming for, but that sword was aiming for someone. I'm like, well, they must have missed pretty bad because it's a sword of.
Or like they were stabbing something in Azeroth, but it was a very well done cinematic. Mm-hmm. It like as someone who again is not huge into World of Warcraft, what I learned from this is that, and again, this is like an outside looking in, those two characters, Anduin and Thrall, have history. Their history is storied, tragic, triumphant, probably the whole gamut. The music, the dialogue, the emotion with the anime, that is how you do a cinematic. I mean, Blizzard has been a master of that for a very long time. But that made me interested in World of Warcraft,
Yeah.
Especially the universe. I've always said, the universe is pretty interesting. I just don't have history with it. And it's okay, do I want to expend the energy to dive into it, if you will? But
yeah. ESO is really, really good at that as well. Whoever does their cinematics. In fact, I wish they could incorporate their cinematics into the game because that would be epic. But unfortunately, they can't do that. I mean, and that's a huge budget to be able to do that kind of stuff.
But you're right. I mean, I wish that they could have implemented, like, every time a new expansion was released, or not, maybe released, but teased for Elder Scrolls Online, they would come up with this very good cinematic with the, I guess, returning popular characters.
Yeah,
and
the Breton, the Elf, and the
Yes.
Nord. Yeah, those are epic.
And it's something
But-
I've always said, if they could have put cutscenes into the game rather than do the story beats the way they do, it would have been 10 times better, in my opinion. It's just not been Bethesda's style, so that's why they didn't, I guess. But
Yeah. And you did get a little bit of that in WoW. Like, you remember questing for
in Dragonflight,
in Dragonflight and in
Battle for Azeroth, yeah.
yeah, because you got a lot
And,
of cinematics.
You did the Burning Legion, which is
I did all of Legion.
pretty important for Anduin's story, as we
Yeah.
know. That we do know. But yeah, so our friend Jeff also, he kind of did a recap in the Loreforge Discord about what else is coming, and they are making some good quality of life changes, as I understand it. The big one that I understood was with transmog, you can now pick up and effectively learn or save a piece's style or transmog, even if you can't wear it. So every time we did one of those raids that were like low level just for transmog runs, I mean, a ton of that gear was basically just getting tossed, and we didn't get
you
anything.
couldn't wear light or heavy. Or,
Right. So now we'll be able to learn that stuff, and even though, maybe my Pandaren monk can't wear it, that heavy armor, I will at least be able to go play on my I guess
Warrior
Death Knight's
or
not.
something.
Whatever, and I could wear it. So
Yeah, that seems odd that was never in the game, but
Yeah.
it wasn't. So that's good that it is. So
yeah.
this trailer did actually. I was like, wow, oh, yeah, that's a game. That's a game that I actually have a max level character, but I don't know. It's just never been my cup of tea. But who knows? I don't know what next year is going to bring. So
Yeah, they do say that War Within will take place in the subterranean kingdoms in Azeroth, where Neribians, sorry, you WoW fans, and an allied race called the Earthen Dwarves await. This big expansion will also contain a ton more, including the promised return of former Talking Knife, Xalatath, new zones like Azkathet, Isle of Dorn, and Ringing Deeps, and Hollowfell, a new treasure hunting adventure activity called Delves, a community feature called Warbands, and new dungeons and raids. And then we didn't learn much about the other ones, but they're called... The Midnight is the second expansion in the World Soul Saga. And then the Last Titan is the final one. So it's very clear that Blizzard is not giving up on World of Warcraft. I don't think they will ever put out a World of Warcraft 2.0 or whatever. Just
at this point, yeah, why would you? It just seems...
Just slowly improve the graphic fidelity of like your old zones, and it's fine.
I guess, yeah.
This is the exact thing we were talking about, though, Shiloh, with Bungie not doing. Blizzard's literally reinvesting into World of Warcraft.
Yeah, and exactly, because Destiny should be... I mean, because they were doing this. They were like, well, we're not going to make another Destiny 2. Much like World of Warcraft will probably never make WoW 2. But Destiny... Yeah, exactly. They're not well, I guess they can't now because they don't have any more people, but they were never funneling anything back into the game, even after they said that, well, we're not going to make a Destiny 3. That's kind of off the table.
Yes.
At least that's been the speculation. And I think that when they did their own roadmap for the next 3 expansions, they kind of like, oh, well, I guess we're not getting a Destiny 3, because that had been kind of rumored for a while before the Witch Queen, Lightfall, and the Final Shape were announced. So,
yes.
Yep. Just sad,
Bummer.
I guess. But good for WoW fans. So
yes.
And I guess
bad for
Diablo 4
Destiny,
fans, so...
but great for WoW.
What was the Diablo 4 class?
They didn't
I
say.
joked at the Milkman, but we'll just call it the Milkman.
Yeah, they didn't say. It's a never before seen class, so
Ooh, okay.
I'm not super knowledgeable on Diablo, so no clue. But
Nope.
this next last piece of news is more hype for the future. So, Ghostcrawler. You may know him as Greg Street. He worked on Wrath of the Lich King. He's worked with Blizzard. More recently, he worked with Riot Games, or worked for Riot Games, and was the head of the Riot MMO, which has not been announced. But then he made this whole long thing, and he ended up leaving Riot. And as all these people do, they leave, to spend time with family, whatever, slow down. And then like 6 months later, they've got a brand new studio working on a brand new game. It's like musicians. Musicians need time to away from the road, and then in 5 months' time, they're in a new super group or in a new project and releasing albums, and then they're going to go tour to support, I get it. It's the creative industry. It's how it works. But this is exciting because Greg Street, aka Ghostcrawler, has started up a brand new studio to work on a new MMO, a modern MMO. And this is what the about of Fantastic Pixel Castle, which is their studio name, says. Fantastic Pixel Castle is a new studio founded in 2023 to create our take on a modernized fantasy MMORPG, codenamed Ghost. How appropriate, Ghostcrawler. If you're interested in our studio, there's more context below. If you just care about Ghost, we totally get it, and you can jump to it down below as well. They are committed to a fully remote and global studio, so this is about the studio as a whole. And they've got world-class people, and we've looked at I looked at the LinkedIn of a ton of these people, and they're like pretty big veterans of the industry. There's one, I guess, Candace Thomas was a pretty big deal with World of Warcraft back in the day. Brian Holinka, we were talking to Stark about this. He's a big deal. So anyway, it's a promising group of people. As we all know, MMOs take a ton of time, so this is probably not coming within the next 6 years. But this is what they said about Ghost, codename Ghost. As players, we are deeply in love with MMOs for their promise of social worlds, but we also feel that the genre has lately struggled to provide a community that you care about while still making your character feel heroic or special. And we kind of had that discussion a time or two in general about, especially like Guild Wars too, about how you can play that game entirely solo, but you play it in a social way with other players all around you. We believe MMOs have moved too far towards solo adventuring where other players often just slow you down. Again, not the case in Guild Wars 2, and that opened Shiloh and I's eyes to this. We want to bring back as central pillars of the MMO experience both playing with friends and building a community. We want to bring back the chance to impact the world around you. We are currently in the early stages of development and don't have a planned release date for Ghost, which, by the way, itself is a placeholder name. I already mentioned that. We're so excited to share our first takes with you, but acknowledge this stuff will inevitably change, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll just read the first one about the world that they're creating. Imagine standing on the weathered cobblestones of an ancient city. In the sky above you are seemingly endless shards of broken worlds, a cornucopia of biomes that promise unlimited adventure and mystery. You are one of the survivors of an apocalypse lost to memory, and the rebuilding of the world now lies on your shoulders. So I don't remember if you were in the discussion the first time we were looking at this, or have you looked at this at all, Shiloh?
Yeah, I watched video of Ghostcrawler. I think it might have been Asmongold's reaction.
So what do you think?
It sounds interesting. Like I say time and time again, it will be hard to pull me away from a Lotro MMO as long as it's decent. And I'm guessing that will be before this is going to launch. I'll definitely keep my eyes on this because I like the ideas.
Yes.
We'll just have to see how it plays out.
Well, it sounds like to me it's going to have a bit of that Remnant 2 style world sharding, if you will. Just because they say for Ghost that there's going to be blue shards, which are kind of like for you and your friends, and these are all in quotes, so I'm assuming they'll come up with lore appropriate names. And then red shards that deliver a more traditional MMO experience.
Like open world.
Yeah. And as you know, when we played Remnant, I think that was the thing that really surprised us, was how intelligent the design of, oh yeah, you can just travel to this completely different. You can travel to this HR Giger world with space alien, you know, crazy things. And then go to this one that's like an old fantasy Dark Souls burning elvish, I don't know, 18th century England world.
Yeah.
Like it was very different atmospheres.
I like this idea though. To me it sounds like, so you can go to these red shards basically solo if you want, experience kind of an open world with other players that you don't have to be in a party with, or you can join these blue shards, which are not necessarily going as a party, as a group, and doing a quote-unquote dungeon, but more going as a group to a particular open world and experiencing that as a group. That I like. That sounds really, really cool, because that eliminates a lot of the open world is too easy. Well, the open world is too hard.
It's up to you. Yeah.
It's up to you now. Like, quit your whining. Like, you're getting what you pay for. So I love this idea of doing that. And then if you throw in dungeons as a possible outlet for both and completely separate those two worlds. So if you do if you're in a blue shard, you can do a dungeon with your group. You have to find that dungeon maybe out in the open world, or if you're in the red shard, you have to join possibly, you know, either through a group finder or just in chat to find a group to do the dungeon. So to me, this is kind of a win-win. I really like this idea of kind of this Remnant 2 system that they might be. And it sounds a lot more complicated than Remnant 2's, which is really, really cool that they've... of course, we have yet to see it. It could not work at all. But it sounds like they have the brain power to basically try to pull this off. So
yes.
I'll definitely keep my keep my finger on this one. This sounds good.
So something that I've always said, and I learned this about myself when we got into Guild Wars 2, is just how important it is to me that the characters matter in the game. And so all of this that we've talked about with Ghost, and you can go to fantasticpixelcastle.com to learn basically everything we're regurgitating to you right here. But I need a good, compelling setting and story and characters. The story is kind of, it just needs to be good. All right, I guess. But the characters, like, I need to have NPCs in this game that feel important, like maybe more important than my player character, but also that my character maybe cares for in, you know, through some shared sort of experience. And so this little section, they do say the world of Ghost is an original IP designed from the ground up to create rich and immersive gameplay. It is a fantasy world of heroic adventure where you seek clues to uncover the mysteries of the world and engage with allies and enemies who have diverse motivations, actions, and secrets. You'll fight with axes and crossbows and magic, but we do want to avoid the tropes of fantasy that you've already seen hundreds of times. For example, there are no elves or orcs in Ghost. We are pouring our passion into the IP development early in order to build something you can enjoy for decades to come. So what I'm hoping that means and all that is that they are, like, they're not going to leave all of the story beats and that type of stuff up to the players. Like, I'm fine with that type of experience in, like, survival games, right? But, like, I look at survival games, there is a loose story to Minecraft. There is a story in Subnautica. there's an actual full-fledged story in Grounded, and of all of those, Grounded is like my favorite survival game because I might be surviving and doing whatever I want in this world, but there is a purpose to it. Whereas when I play a game, if it's just a pure sandbox and there's no purpose, I'm kind of just like, I don't keep interest.
Gathering palm leaves. Okay, here we go.
I'm gathering palm leaves because Shiloh needs palm leaves so he can finish the pigsty hut where we're gonna, raise our pigs with our friend Tempest, and then we're gonna keep raising more animals so we can build a. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of mundane. All right.
Yep.
That's all fine and dandy. Let's dive in to, and will be a really short intro, but I've thought of no better way of, no better bumper for this than the first thing you hear right now when you fire up Final Fantasy XIV. So apparently that's Tales of Loss and Fire and Fate or something is the lyrics to that. I've always wondered because I'm like, what exactly is she singing?
Yeah, I just sing along like la la la. Yeah, I have no idea what I had. Couldn't have said a word of that, but okay, good to know.
So, Final Fantasy XIV, maybe before we get into this sort of introduction, and I think you put in here a 10 things you didn't know about the original 2010 game, and that's kind of going to be our launching point, I think.
Okay.
And then as we do multiple episodes over the next however long we're playing this game, we can dive into some of the lore, some of the maybe what exactly are Lalafels, all that jazz. But before all of that, what draws you Shiloh specifically, to Final Fantasy XIV? Like, what is it about, and don't say cat girls, what is it about the game that draws you to it?
Honestly, the first thing was the fact that it was a MMO that I hadn't tried and heard a lot of good things about and wanted to play but couldn't, and eventually got a PS4 Pro and was able to play. Initially, I was like, oh, what have I done? But as time went on and I started to kind of, it grows on you, especially if you're not a quote-unquote Final Fantasy fan, and I would qualify as that.
Yeah.
But I am a MMO nerd. I mean, I play any MMO at least to give it a shot, if not play it through to the end. And so it kind of drew me in. And the story, it goes, the game is dated looking at times. I think the character models are great. I think
and the animations with them too.
Animations are great, especially in combat. The backgrounds, a lot to be desired, in my opinion.
Is that just base game, or does that extend a little into expansions?
Honestly, I think it extends into expansions a little bit. Not as bad. And I've only been through up to Shadowbringers, so it gets better, I think, like any MMO. Especially the armor. Like the armor, like early game stuff, just looks like, what are you wearing?
Absolutely.
But that's that's almost every MMO. But what drew me in ultimately was near the end of the main story quest, the MSQ. Sorry, Weevil. He doesn't like anagrams apparently. So, but yeah, the main story quest eventually near the end gets really, really, really juicy.
Okay.
And you start to, even if you don't necessarily like some of the characters, they grow on you a little bit. Then by Heaven's Ward, their first expansion, they really grow on you, and then some of the characters, like, I don't know, I won't spoil anything, but
Yeah.
so by Stormblood you really get kind of a really good feel for some of the characters, and actually, I don't know, they become part of your gang, part of your
Part of your jam,
Yeah.
your crew.
yeah.
On that topic, you've played through all the expansions, correct? That are currently in the game?
No, excuse me. I've played up to Shadowbringers, so I've played maybe
the second to last one, huh?
about a third of the way through. So I have to get. That's why I've been leveling my warrior, trying to get back up to close to 70. I think my highest level job is 78.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get my warrior, and I don't necessarily need to be at 78. Like, my Reaper is way above where I was in the story, so I can probably hit it in the early
Gotcha.
70s, and I'll be fine. But yeah, I've been trying to get, and she's 61 now, I think, as a warrior. But so I'm trying to get back up to that point to where I can maybe go through, and because I've had to relearn, how to play, especially going from a PS4 Pro to a PC. So, but yeah, the game is a brilliant story throughout. Like, it's just a fun anime story, which I don't necessarily like, and so that is telling in and of itself. It's just not my jam, but this game in particular kind of draws you in. I won't. We can save what I ultimately think about pros and cons for later. But
Okay.
that's. Yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to take the reins and continue this journey?
Yeah.
into
So,
Eorzea?
10 things you didn't know about the original 2010 game. These are none of these. I had an idea of a couple of them, but
Okay, and I'll probably know none of them. So I'm a noob, and I'm letting Shiloh guide me.
For the listeners and well, maybe for you. So this game was originally released in 2010, and it was a disaster.
Wait,
with
really?
terrible.
I guess that in and of itself, I didn't. So it was out for 4 years. Well,
Prior to
I think we'll get there.
A Realm Reborn. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a disaster with terrible reviews on every end, as well as fan backlash. Great. It was nothing like the game it is today. However, many current players wish they could have experienced it. After all, it did lead up to one of the most unique experiences players got in an MMORPG, Dalaman's Explosion. So what they did was, when Yoshi P, they kind of, Square Enix hit the panic button, let all of their big game developers go, and then brought in Yoshi P, I think, who originally had worked on like Dragon Quest or something, and to basically help save the game. And so he did a head count of people that actually cared about the game in the studio, and the rest that didn't, or didn't think that the game could be salvaged. Basically, he asked them to leave, or resign, or whatever. And so he surrounded himself with people that he thought could try to save this sinking ship. And 2 years later, it came out, I believe in 2012, I believe. Anyway, and it took a while to get all the fixes and bugs. They kind of had to start from the ground up, and so he had to release it, and then they just kept patching stuff throughout to kind of keep up with his vision. So initially, in the 2010 game, players didn't have chocobos or sprinting, so there were no mounts.
Oh man,
there was no sprinting in the game, which I thought was funny.
I got tired of that by level 10 for sure.
Yeah.
Well, the sprinting's
sprint.
there.
Yeah. But yeah, the mount thing was, of course, we just got them in New World, so I couldn't imagine. I mean, I was doing that for my initial playthrough.
Yeah.
The game had a fatigue system, which I didn't realize. So
what's that? So
initially, in the 2010 version, was in place. The fatigue system was in place. So if you gain too much XP, it would lessen your XP gains as time went on.
That
So you
might
couldn't
be the
necessarily-
most egregious thing that I
Yeah.
have heard.
It was. I guess they put it in place so people couldn't power level that fast. So, but yeah, that doesn't sound like fun.
Ouch.
I mean, if you're not going through the main story, leveling can be kind of a pain unless you're going through queues and doing your your duties and dailies and all that kind of stuff. It can get really grindy, but you know, as you've seen with your character, if you just play the game, sometimes you just way out level the story in general. So
That's where I'm at, yeah.
yeah, it turns out, I guess this system, and there wasn't even hardly a story, I think, in the 2010 game. So that's all you really could do was grind. And then you got penalized if you were grinding too much, I guess. So, and the next point is there wasn't much story. So there you go.
Which, as I've been told by Tempest and you even, the MSQ is nothing, certainly where I'm at, is not really remarkable. It's when you get into the expansions that that's where people are like, Final Fantasy XIV has the best story of any MMO. And it's not because of the base game. And I would say the same is true within Guild Wars 2 as well. So I think it's just these, and many people would probably say WoW's the exact same. Wrath of the Lich, and there was no story in the base game. Once Wrath came out, that was their thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you've got to, you know, get to know the characters and all that kind of stuff.
Get to know the world, get used to it.
But to be fair, the main story was just kind of like, there are other ways you get, but I'm sure it was a big improvement to the way it was before. So,
Gotcha.
Let's see. The terrible reviews severely affected Square Enix, so the company reduced its projected income for the year by a whooping 90% when the game flopped.
That's
The
harsh.
company issued a ton of apologies to players and felt like they broke a trust between the company and Final Fantasy fans. So, I guess they've always owned Final Fantasy, the franchise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
So, yeah,
and
that
I mean,
would have been
that franchise is massive.
beloved.
So.
Would have been a real kick in the old nutso. But they recovered. But it's still really their bread and butter. Like, that's pretty much what they live and die by. I guess Life is Strange and those games are Square Enix, but I don't see them pulling in huge numbers. But they do release other
Final
stuff.
Fantasy, yeah.
No. So Yoshi P took over to try to save the MMO. We went over that. Yeah, he was not part of the original Final Fantasy team and worked on the Dragon Quest games, which I've never played.
Yeah, me neither. Although, no, I'm thinking of Dragon's Dogma. So yeah, I don't know much about Dragon Quest.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, so, and what I mentioned before, the game was rebuilt from scratch while also getting updated. So they completely scrapped a lot of the 2010 game. And they had to kind of rebuild it all, and then they just kept patching it like clockwork almost, I guess, to kind of keep up with what they needed to do to get the game up to speed. So
Yeah.
and the game was they just did this all in 2 years. So
That's amazing.
yeah. He said, I guess no one got any sleep. For,
Yeah,
I think-
you couldn't.
and there are times when you look at Yoshi and you're like, oh, man.
That guy needs a break.
But what we alluded to earlier with the 2010 release is the only, I guess, the main big thing was you got to watch the moon explode, which was Dalamon. So That might have been cool, I guess. But yeah, the number two one here is the game no longer exists. So the 2010 version is wiped clean. It was the only way that they could really, they had to just destroy the old servers and then completely move on from their mistakes. I think what they did, so players that stuck around, this is the last little bit. Players that stuck around since 2010 have a tattoo on their characters.
Oh.
So the last reward Square Enix gave the players of the 2010 version is that their characters got permanently marked with a tattoo.
That's really neat.
Yeah, if you play Final Fantasy XIV and see players with the design behind their back shoulders, that means they played the original game. They even got to keep their characters as they get teleported to safety in the story when Dalamon explodes. So I guess they didn't do a clean wipe, like the players got to keep their characters, but they just teleported them somewhere else to basically start their new journey. So that was really cool.
So I'm going to be looking for every single cat girl in Limsa Laminza. I'm going to be looking to see that tattoo.
Yeah.
And all the other people that don't wear clothes in Limsa Laminza, which is a lot.
Which is about 78%.
Yeah. But that's really neat. Like, just the concept. Yeah. Of like, one, you get to keep your character. Two, there's going to be this cataclysmic event that you're going to be able to watch in game. And then upon its conclusion, you can't play this game for 2 years. And then we're going to mark, your character's going to get something that nobody else for the next 10 years will get. Like, that's really neat, and that's really special, I think.
Yeah. I love and I wish that more MMOs would do this sort of thing. Like we had talked about with Fortnite, with these events that would go on in the world. Like
world-shaping events or something?
World-shaping events. When I was playing, I think it was Asheron's Call, this was an older MMO around the time of EverQuest, like the original EverQuest, not even EverQuest 2.
Okay.
So like early 2000s. There was a town that a lot of people would gather in. It was kind of the main hub town called Leaf Cull, I think was the name of the town. And it was a fairly busy town with all sorts of things going on. The developers at the time decided to invade the town and permanently basically destroyed the town and their story.
Okay.
And it was epic, and you just don't see stuff like that anymore. And sure, there were people that were pissed off, and like, that was my town. Like, well, and there was no player housing, I don't think, in that game.
Yeah.
And so the players didn't really have any assets and stuff, but they could have rewarded players in a different way, even if they did have housing or they did have stuff going on in that town. But the fact that the developers would come in and I think they actually controlled some of the monsters, and they basically just marched in, destroyed the town. Yeah. And I think they had to eventually, it was kind of part of the story arc, they just rebuilt the town. So
that's kind of like what Lion's Arch had happened to Lion's Arch in a way, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's something similar to that.
Yeah, that's
where like developers could come in and just play. The problem being, I think, is really on the players more than it is the developers, probably, because players probably, and there's a lot more invested now in MMOs, probably. So
I think they're afraid of like taking that risk and then it going, like, for instance, like, say Stormwind gets nuked. Maybe that giant sword we saw is just stabbed into Stormwind. That's gonna piss a lot of people off. From you and I's perspective, like, that'd be super neat to see Blizzard do something like that, and then Yeah, sorry, Stormwind is literally just a husk now.
Just go rubble.
Like,
yeah.
that would be cool. But there's a lot of people who have spent the past 20 years doing God knows what in Stormwind, and they would probably not take that well. So maybe it's just how players have evolved too. But
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's just on the players more than it's the developers.
but Fortnite
It's not
did
that players
so
have become big babies. I'm not really insinuating that, although that could be
kind of
probably
am
true.
a bit.
But yeah, it's well, I mean, if you really look at like New World, completely took
Yeah, that's a good example.
they took
First Light, I think.
First Light and made it Elysium and said, well, sorry, we need this zone and it's being overrun now. So if you had a house,
that's a good example of that. There's a lore reason for it. It wasn't just like you couldn't go there anymore. Like they put up those vines that you
around the
through.
borders from
yeah.
So maybe we'll see it a little bit more. Sometimes you just have to take risks, and WoW doesn't really necessarily need to, and New World did, so or could afford to, because I guess that area was not really used that much at all. So, and they needed, I guess a place to put the new story, and didn't want to expand the world quite yet, or maybe I guess it's hard to because it's an island. Really, it's like but I guess you can go up or down.
They don't want to just keep going up though. Maybe they do eventually, but Burning Sands, and then let's go up again and another level. I mean, they're all like level 60 plus. So yeah, that's a good point.
We'll see. But I thought that those were all interesting.
Yeah,
things.
very
A lot of the
interesting.
stuff that I didn't really know either. I didn't know about the tattoos, and didn't know about the. I had a feeling that they didn't have mounts, but I didn't know they didn't even have sprinting.
Or the fatigue system. Ugh.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
Well,
Okay, well, I see. So you are curious on where I'm at in the MSQ, and this will probably wrap it up
yeah.
for this episode. But I am on a level 23 quest, so we were talking about this earlier and how you can kind of get ahead of your quest line. And I haven't done a ton of extra stuff, I don't think. But I am a level 37 monk, and I am at level 23 on the MSQ. The only outside stuff I've done is like that quest in Limsa with the hairdresser, beautician. There's a fancy word for it. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
That creepy guy with the scissors.
Mm-hmm.
And then, stuff
I need to know.
like the glamour one in some town near Horizon in Thanalin. Sentinel. Yeah. Where the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, or I think that's their name, have their little base.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the most part, I have just done that type of quest, like the stuff that's important. All of the pugilist quests, and then 2 of the monk quests, and the MSQ up to 23, and I'm already like 15 levels higher, basically. And so more recently, I've met all of... Ooh, I keep bumping this. I've met all of the... I guess the heads of state of like Ul'dah, Limsa, Ghirardelli chocolate. What's it called? Gridania. That's the one. And I've joined the Scions. I joined the Grand Company, the Maelstrom for Limsa.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like real basic, real early on. It was from kind of what Tempest was telling me. So
Yeah.
and I'm really enjoying it too. I mean, it's I'm doing something in the Shroud involving these sylphs, schleps. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
I was doing like 5 of those quests the night before when we were talking about not New World Ashes and all the new WoW stuff and everything. I have no idea what's going on with them, but I don't think it's like super important. I know there's something to do with primals, based on the one that I already have faced, which was really cool, by the way. One thing that I've been noticing is the dungeons and like the boss encounters, like the animations are sweet. Like some of them give like Dark Souls vibes, and of course like that I think is kind of the standard, the gold standard for boss encounters. So that's a great comparison. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's, you know how, I mean, you know for sure how busy this time of year is. So it's just been fun to later at night just hop into Final Fantasy XIV and maybe do a quest or two. They do have the Fall Guys event going on, which is bizarre, is the way I'll take it. Say it. But the irony is I've played now more Fall Guys in Final Fantasy XIV than I have in actual Fall Guys. So I've unlocked the entire outfit, which is a really nice, like you were saying, like the character models, like they did a good job with those character models and with how like the armor sits on them or non-armor, and same with the animations with it. Like they really put time and energy into how people look in this game. So I'm just kind of dipping my toes in a lot of different things and really enjoying it. So I do have my chocobo, thankfully, nice. Which was necessary. So
yeah. Well, I mean, like Tempest had said, you probably just need to pick up a second job.
I'm thinking about that. Like maybe go pick up Thaumaturge leads to Black Mage, correct?
Yeah, I think that's it.
What leads to Dark Knight? Do you know?
Dark Knight is a locked, you need to get to Heavensward.
I know, but what's the like...
There's no, you just need to have a martial ability up to 30, I think.
Which would be war,
which would
be the monk.
Yeah. So you'd be fine.
Okay.
You could pick that up once you get to Heavensward.
What about what was it? White? I guess like I'm just thinking like basic like tank or healer, like White Mage. What's the starter for that?
It's just
so maybe I do Thaumaturge.
Is it Arcanist or is that Conjure? And I don't know. It's one of those. It starts in New Gridania.
Okay.
The white mage does.
Maybe I'll do Thaumaturge and go for Black Mage, and because obviously Monk is very close quarters melee range, and then Black Mage is going to be ranged damage. So
yeah, I
think we've said it before, but I really love that I can do all of this on a single character. All the account, everything is just one character. Love it. So, okay, well, I think that's going to do it for this episode. There is something that we were thinking of doing this episode, and I'm going to move it to the next one. And that is going to be a extended book report, and I put books in quotes because it's really a TV show report, and that is Netflix's Dad of Light, which is a one-season mini-series on Final Fantasy XIV. So, and we both watched it already, but I need a recap, so.
Yeah. It's good.
So we're going to talk about that next episode, along with a continued look at, maybe we'll do like, these are like, you know, this is Final Fantasy XIV now, and, you know, where we're at and all that stuff. But, and then I wanted to also update on the end of the year. So 2023 is already almost over. We've got a month and a half, like a month and 3/4 left. And so there's going to be 5 episodes left of Questing the Multiverse for 2023. These next 2 are going to be predominantly Final Fantasy XIV. But then when we get into December, we've got 3 episodes that will have each their own focus. The first is going to be a look at the nominations of the Game Awards and sort of our predictions. The next will be a special Christmas episode with a good friend of ours named Jordan Hopper. He was a co-host with me on a board game podcast called the No Cube Zone once upon a time. And so he does this fun little eBay guessing game. And it's just, that episode it's just going to be laughs and stupidity, and, we'll bring your hot chocolate or hot toddy or whatever you're into, listener, and enjoy it. And then the final episode of the year is going to be our top 10 games played in 2023, the list. So it's not games released, but our top 10 experiences, our gaming experiences in 2023, which should be an interesting list. This is the first year that we've done something like this where I'm having a really hard time with the order. Maybe not like the first few, but like the rest of them, there's a ton of solid contenders. I don't know if you've looked at it at all yet, Shiloh, but...
No, I'm going to have to sit down with it, and yeah, I might have the same problem.
Yeah, well, especially because we've played a ton of games this year, like all sorts of stuff. So, well, Shiloh, any final things you want to add for the end of this episode? Nuggets of wisdom?
Nope, I think that's it.
All right. Well, listener, thank you as always for hanging out with us, interacting with us in Discord, Twitter, wherever else. We thank you, and we hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you in the next episode. I almost said GG, but peace.
Questing the Multiverse is brought to you in part by Coniff Productions, House Wood Designs, and Joel Crawford. To follow along with our adventures, please follow us on Twitter at QTM Podcast and consider joining our Discord, a link of which can be found in the show notes or in our Twitter bio. Want your questions or comments read on the show? Email us at questingthemultiverse@gmail.com. Finally, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a review or a follow wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening.